Janet Granger, back with another Wildlife Wins podcast, and I'm really excited today to have George Baldwin here. George is an educator and an advocate for fisheries science and management. So we're going to find out what that's all about and how that is helping the environment and wildlife. So George, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, Janet. How are you?
I am well. So will you first explain what fisheries science and management is for people who may not know?
Yeah, everybody likes seafood, and a lot of us like to fish recreationally, for many different reasons. It's a very popular sport. So as with pretty much anything, we need a little bit of management of our resources so that it doesn't get depleted very quickly, which does tend to happen unless we have certain rules set regulating the pace at which we take our resources. Even our renewable resources take time to renew. And if we're depleting them faster than they could be renewed, we run into problems there. So to avoid the fox guarding the hen house syndrome there, it's good to have babysitters for government and industry. Otherwise, we know what can happen there. So what we do is talk with legislators, fisheries managers such as NOAA Fisheries or the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, et cetera, to let them know what we see happening out on the water and what needs to be done to better protect our fisheries and keep them abundant. Because when our fisheries are abundant, everybody benefits. Recreational fishermen, commercial fishermen, wildlife, people who just like to walk along the beaches and see, the water and wildlife, etc. Our resources, our public resources belong to everybody. Sometimes people forget that, and or it gets allocated more preferentially to certain groups rather than others when it belongs to everybody. Everybody has a say in this. We should use that power to be able to make sure that nobody gets shortchanged on it, where we see our favorite resources disappear. So we also do advocating for funding for NOAA. Recently, everyone's heard about cutbacks in certain government programs. It's pretty endemic nowadays, and we really need our government to see what is important to us and why these things are needed, and that we do vote also, and we vote according to our needs being met. So that's some of the things we do. Also, other things like access. Right, public access, our shorelines, or we have public access up to the high tide mark here in Connecticut, the mean high tide mark. A lot of people may not know that. Well, lots of times our access to those public resources are blocked by people planting shrubs or putting big boulders or whatever over rights of way. So we don't have, and lots of times there is no public right of way to that public resource. So we're kind of cut off by that. That's another area in which we work to protect our resources for each other and for the use of the public also.
Wow, so that's a lot. That's a big responsibility.
Yeah, it is. And it's a constant battle.
And where do you, just for context for people, where do you do this? Where are you located?
I'm in Connecticut. I have a fishing club that I'm very active in. I was president for 5 terms. I'm conservation chairman and membership chairman currently of that group. That's the Connecticut Surfcasters Association. I keep in contact with a lot of people through Facebook groups. There's a lot of Facebook fishermen groups out there. So I have access to tens of thousands of people, actually. So that is very convenient in getting work done, because we have to get the public behind these issues. One thing that I've heard from even fisheries managers are that the people who benefit financially from these resources always show up at the meetings and always give their opinions, because they depend on that monetarily. Sure. They've got to feed mouths, they've got to make a living, so they always show up. But other people who also use those resources, like I said, they belong to everybody, like fishermen and beachgoers, etc., don't really show up at these meetings. So they think it's not as important to anyone other than the groups that show up, because there's no way for them to gauge public interest and the public needs unless we speak up.
That's a great point. So I would love for you to share, George. We talked a little bit before we were recording. Share some successes. There are some amazing success stories that you know about. I mean, starting back in the 1980s, of how fisheries management actually does work.
Yeah, well, a long time ago, actually pre-1976, we had a lot of foreign fleets fishing down our fisheries. And so we had big factory trawlers from across the sea, from China, Russia, European countries, right off our shorelines within view of our beaches, sucking up our resources, millions of tons of fish, every year. Uh, that was one problem that was happening. But even among our domestic fishermen, both recreational and commercial, there were no limits on it. People aren't going to really set limits for themselves on it, on a communal resource like that, because everybody, like I said, everyone's got mouths to feed, everyone has to make a living. Other people like to take something for dinner or for sport or whatever. And we everyone's afraid of the next guy taking the last one or more than you or whatever. So everybody steps it up and nobody cuts back. Everyone's afraid of being the one to lose it. So in 1976, actually, they came up with the exclusive economic zone, which ranges from 200 miles offshore, which is under federal control. And our government has say in who gets to fish there and how those fisheries are managed, et cetera. So that brought back a lot of our fisheries from the brink of collapse, actually.
Wow.
We've also, the striped bass population was going downhill fast in the 1970s and early 1980s. And it was fishermen who demanded that legislators pass laws to bring back the striped bass stocks, which was accomplished by 1993 or 1994 was when it was declared rebuilt, and
Wow.
was doing very well for a long time. We've got a little more work to do now to keep that up. There's other factors involved too, such as probably a lot of them influenced by climate change also. So there's a lot of things we still have to figure out before getting things back on track again. So we're working on those now. There's also the herring population, the river herring, which was instrumental in bringing back the ospreys and the eagles, which both time they're hatching their young and their migrations to be able to have the herring in the spring to feed their young when there's not really much else around to feed them. Also, those were the main sustenance for our striped bass, bluefish, weakfish, and other large game fish in this area that are very important to our fishermen. Those populations were going downhill for quite a while. But then in the late 1990s, we started building fish ladders and taking down dams and moving fish to new potential spawning areas and brought them back to a large degree. Things were going pretty well until pretty recently. A conflict with commercial fishing interests who were fishing for one fish stock that was being depleted. But we also had our herring fisheries, our river herring here mixed in with those Atlantic herring that they were targeting for the commercial industry. So
Ah,
our river herring were going downhill again after spending millions of dollars, literally millions and millions of dollars on these fishways and dam removals and the restoration efforts. And like I said, it's our fishermen, our fish stocks, a lot of our wildlife depend on these fish. So National Marine Fisheries put a ban on midwater trawling in those areas where they were intercepting those herring populations. Well, a judge in Boston shot down that ban, saying that there was nothing to tie those fish that were being caught in those nets to the fish that were being depleted from Connecticut waters. But shortly after that, a few scientists found some genetic markers that definitively link those fish and show
wow.
that they're one and the same. So
Wow.
we're working now on in implementing restrictions that will both allow the herring industry to flourish, yet allow our rivering herring stocks here to be able to come back and spawn and keep those numbers up. Right now, we're actually, the last 3 years were the highest on record for our herring stocks. So
Wow.
that's
So,
doing pretty well.
yeah, so what a great story about understanding exactly how the whole food web works and working very hard to fix what had otherwise been broken with commercial fishing, but also understanding there it's a very complex system in terms of, you know, nothing swims alone, right?
No,
So
we're all part of the same ecosystem. People forget that.
people
And
forget that.
in these
Yeah.
modern days, people look at nature and the ecosystems as something out there. They don't realize that we are an integral part of that and very dependent on the rest of that ecosystem.
Yeah. Wow.
So we're also
Wow. So
protecting
much,
us.
so
Yeah.
much learning here. So what I want to do is I want to leave people, George, with a way to learn more. Are there organizations that they can learn about or the websites they can go to?
Yeah, by all means. If we're talking specifically about the fisheries, you could go to the NOAA Fisheries, also known as National Marine Fisheries Service. They have websites where you can go on there and sign up for their newsletters. They have newsletters that they send. I was going to say like monthly or weekly, but a lot of them come in between also. But they'll keep you up on what's going on out there. The Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission also has websites there, and they'll send you newsletters letting you know what upcoming hearings are going on. Part of the regulatory process where they come up with the regulations is a public scoping hearing, and what that is they will have their scientists come and show a PowerPoint presentation to you, to a group like our marine headquarters, marine fisheries headquarters in Old Lyme here in Connecticut. So these groups will come and inform us on what's going on with the fisheries from their points of view and what the options are for management. So they will inform us of different management options that we can help choose from, that will be voted on and implemented. So you can not only listen and learn about this, but you could also speak at these meetings to give your words on what you see happening, what changes you feel need to be made, and how you feel those changes should be implemented. So
This is great. I want people to feel empowered to
oh yeah,
make a
definitely.
difference and to make
There's
their voices
also
known and to learn, right? So
right. They also have Zoom meetings, just like we have now, but with those fisheries management entities too. And you can also sign up to speak at those meetings as well as listen. And you could send in your comments. Like for Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, you could send in an email to comments@asmfc.org. So there's lots of groups on the internet now too. That's one of the great things about social media. Everybody has problems with social media, but there's also some great benefits, and then it could keep people, like-minded people with similar interests, in contact with each other. And there's a lot of those sites around Connecticut also. If they want, they could check out my, contact me, and I'll send you in the right directions at George R. Baldwin on Facebook. So I can help you out with that, because there are quite a few out there, and a lot of them are specific to certain fisheries also. But also for public access, there's public access groups in Connecticut that are trying to expand and preserve our shoreline access, since it does belong to all of us, etc. So there's.
I want to thank you, George. This has been great and a great education and so much information and places people can go next. And that's exactly what I want to provide for people, for them to know that good things are happening and they can be a part of it and do more. So thank you so much for being with me
today. The most
today.
important thing is, don't just complain about it. A lot of people will write a page on Facebook complaining about it, but won't take 3 minutes to send an email to their legislators. Get involved and do it. If you care about it, get involved and do it. It belongs to you.
Do it.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much, George. I appreciate your being here.
Okay, thank you. And again, Happy New Year, Janet.
You too.